And to Uganda now, where the national debt has nearly trebled in the last 3 years to more than 50% of GDP. This, of course, has created a risk of default since nearly 2/3 of that debt is external. Now, this is according to a report published by the Bank of Uganda. The bank says the rising costs of servicing the country's $15.1 billion debt could affect economic growth because of reduced public investment. Over the last decade, the government has ramped up borrowing to fund infrastructure projects, including roads, power plants, fibre cable networks, and an airport expansion. Now, Uganda's economy has been struggling in the last few years due to poor agricultural output, weak exports, and corruption. Growth was about 3.9% last year, down from about 4.8% in 2016. Well, let's get some analysis on the issue in Kampala. Julius Mishambi, Director of Programs at the Uganda Debt Network, now joins us. Very welcome to the show, sir. Now, first and foremost, is Uganda heading towards a default? And certainly, what are the implications of this news? Are we going to see a slowdown in government service delivery as well as a greater burden on taxpayers there?
In Uganda, the Uganda Debt Network researchers indicate that we've had previously bad situations in the 1980s and 2000s in respect to debt. We've had the service delivery really adversely affected because then the priority has been debt servicing as opposed to actual service delivery and the subsequent intended outcomes. In respect to the current situation, away from the figures floated by even the International Monetary Fund, but also Bank of Uganda, the analysis by Uganda Debt Network shows that Uganda's indebtedness today is in the excess of $14.2 billion, and that's not healthy for our economy, certainly. Our difference in analysis is mainly in respect to the fact that while the government and the International Monetary Fund have emphasized disbursed and outstanding debt, as Uganda Debt Network, we have gone beyond the outstanding to also look at the undisbursed resources, but already being accounted against the Ugandan economy and Ugandan people, the level of domestic arrears, the contingent liabilities, say, through the court awards, but also the land compensations that are worth trillions of the Ugandan local currency. So that situation is getting us to a level where debt repayment, therefore, will become a priority. Even looking at the current financial year, already debt repayment takes the center stage in the priority, being the first in terms of resource allocation, followed by other sectors, which we think has got an adverse implication on the performance of Ugandan economy and the Ugandan welfare.
Well, certainly it feels like a greater burden to taxpayers. This could be some of the implications. But of course, we've seen the government defending these debt levels. It says infrastructure investment was necessary for the economy. But some are questioning whether Uganda will see the benefits or the growth benefits from these debt levels, given that, of course, that it may be outweighed by the burden of debt repayments on the government's part. Do you agree with this view?
We appreciate for a long time we have advised the government that we cannot scatter resources all over. We need to take kind of a flagship model approach, which so far has been the case since financial year 2006-07 to date. And roads or infrastructure generally has been a priority, and we think that that's the way to go, to the extent that those projects are linked to other attendant subsectors, like agricultural production in relation to the production under the standard gauge railway borrowing and investments that are being done. In respect to, if we took a case of recent borrowing for Kabale International Airport, which is going to be in the Graben area for oil production prospects, and the tourism potential, the security reasons that we have an alternative international airport to an existing Entebbe international one, and the whole relationship and linkage with oil production in the subsequent period is a good borrowing. But if you looked at some of the infrastructural cases where we've lost roads, money lost through runaway corruption, that becomes a challenge. So it has to be a balance of the linkages, the backward and forward linkages into economic production and potentials if we are to realize these results.
Well, many thanks for joining us, sir. Unfortunately, we have to leave it there. Of course, that was Julius Mishambi. He's with Uganda's Debt Network.